YouTube video, yay! Anyway, the Magic Sandwich show video is up, and so I just thought I would point it out and link below, or I'll link to it through the video or whatever. Yeah, it was interesting. So I'll play their responses to my commentary and just see where it goes from there. But my opening remark was pretty good. I got my 3 or 4 minutes to spiel my spiel. Didn't get all of it out, but most of it. But I was basically just making the value argument that evolution is not necessarily an efficient process. It's created us at a huge price, and we have these problems that don't seem to go away. The poor will be with you always, and in huge, gigantic numbers. And that, we're just not doing this life thing good enough to justify itself, and that it's really messy when you look at other segments of the what life is doing on Earth, because natural selection values quantity over quality. It doesn't really care about the quality of life, it cares about its durability and basically overwhelming the adversaries with raw numbers alone, to scratch out and eke out existences. And it just doesn't have any decent ethics and whatever. So I was making that point, and then and I was pointing out that science doesn't seem to have anything to, science is kind of like a theology, DNA theism, where they've replaced God with a DNA molecule and are now worshiping a biological process that's insidiously badly incentivized. And and so then I think Thunderfoot's the first interrupter, so I'll go to his segment and I'll play their remarks and then explain how they misparaphrased me and ignored the argument. Yeah, that's what I'll do.
Yeah. Okay, 2 billion.
I don't know any. I'm not so sure I know any scientists who glorify or pray to the mechanism. I mean, science is basically
did a video about our beautiful blue marble home, our beautiful home in the universe. You glorify the process in glowing terms.
When was science ever mentioned in that video?
Well, it's not the point. Your channel is a science channel, is it not?
Yes.
So I'm just saying it was projected as if this is what science sees when it looks into the universe, and it sees pretty colors and a beautiful home. And aren't we fantastic because we can communicate with each other and use big syllabled words?
But how do you get from that to glorifying and worshipping the bloodbath of evolution?
Well, I guess
it's just a mechanism.
I'll continue, but it's just a mechanism. See, I mean, this is the argument, and that's part of the. It's the mechanism. It's the mechanism. It's the sacred mechanism. You can't complain about the process that created us, our origins. You can't complain about our structure or our tools. So again, I would analogize this as if Thunderfoot. Well, these guys sort of do have Tyrannosaurus blood. But yeah, if they were Tyrannosaurus, if Tyrannosauruses were the first animal to get intelligence, I guess they would be just as self-justifying as these humans. They'd have these overt tools of war, and they would just try to rationalize and justify. And that's all, because that's all they would see is Tyrannosaurus good, everything else bad, everything else food. And intelligence, we can't say that intelligence should be able to rise above that and be able to make judgments about the function. So let's understand that we all know that science plays this game. Even Dawkins does this fluffy cloud kind of crap. Wears Hawaiian shirts and does lectures on how wonderful evolution is. So it's all over the place, this justification, this circle of life kind of image they keep putting on top of the carnage. Just a mechanism. Just a mechanism, like slavery. Just a mechanism, a highly productive mechanism that evolution would endorse entirely. And maybe we shouldn't. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, let's continue.
different mechanism.
Yeah, I know, but just by the arguments made here, the guy started off concordance with an argument about how people are having kids because they need more workers on their farm. I mean, that's an insidious, disgusting ethic, right? I mean, on its face. And someone would call that successful, okay, because that gets their DNA.
Is it successful? I mean, if you are looking for a way of ensuring that there is security in your old age, having children is one way to do that, yes?
Oh, I know, but that's the...
So did you? So the last time I got Thunderfoot to say that philosophy is genetic, and now he's endorsing slavery. I mean, I even used the word slavery in describing the fact that if you're having children because you want workers for your farm, that's slavery. And I don't think you can make a rational argument that it's not slavery. And that he just endorsed it as, well, the DNA says it's okay, so it must be okay. DNA will reward you. Your genes will go further into the future if you enslave your children, if you enslave them to your stupid poverty, or enslave them to ignorance, or enslave them to a religion. It's okay because the DNA molecule thinks that's the way to go. It's highly successful. I don't think he'd use this argument, though, if he was talking about Islam. It's highly successful. Islam has been highly successful, coming out of a desert, okay, and it's the dominant religion on earth now. And so therefore the DNA has validated having 10 kids, living in squalor, living like pigs and slobs, and having the mentality of a pig and a slob. Not even a pig. A pig isn't as big a moron. Pigs don't walk around in burqas and beat their wives, mostly. And so he just endorsed it, though. So why are you complaining about Islam? It's what the DNA says. The DNA says we should be just intelligent enough to make a big weapon stick. And it doesn't give a shit about you being any more intelligent than that. It wants you living in mud and dirt and squalor, okay, and calling it successful because there's a lot of you. Scientists. See, that's what's wrong with scientists. That doesn't sound like a very scientific understanding of reality. And I don't think those kind of words would come out of Einstein's mouth.
Point is that that's not ethical to use somebody else as a slave to your welfare. So, in my opinion, that's no better than slavery.
Yeah, but Gary, this is not it's not a prescriptive description here. It's just simply descriptive.
Well, concordance guy, guess what? Thunderfoot was making a prescription. He was saying the DNA says this works. So he was making a prescription. He asked me, is it successful? Like it was some sort of silly question. Yes, of course, slavery is very successful. It's highly productive. You want to get to the future faster? Enslave some people, whip them into doing your work for you and building your civilization. It's highly, highly, highly profitable. But it's indecent. It's grotesque. It's disgusting.
This is why people have children in the developing world, is because it is for them a Social Security. I wouldn't say that I admire that, or I'm glad about it, or I'm glorifying it. I don't ascribe to that any moral dimension.
Again, so this is a scientist. He can't subscribe to slavery any moral dimension. He can't find a moral cause anywhere in there. I just don't think it's good, and I don't think it's bad. If you got them, have them. You know, you got a few slaves, beat the shit out of them. It's okay with me because I can't find a moral dimension. I'm a scientist and I can't find the moral dimension. Fuck!
It's someone acting out of necessity.
Necessity! Necessity is the excuse then. I want to have a better lifestyle. I want somebody to wipe my ass when I'm 85 years old out of guilt. So, therefore, that's what your definition of necessity is? Necessity is I want slaves to wipe my drool when I'm a fucking babbling asshole? That's a fucking necessity? You get the sarcasm in my fucking blank stare? What are you talking about, you crazy fuck? That's not what's called necessity.
You are imposing your own view on it, which is you find...
Yeah, that's right. I'm imposing my opinion, okay? My own view is a nice way to call it, but I guess when you talk, it's your opinion, and when somebody else talks, it's their own view. Is that part of your double-speak science talk? All right? Yeah, that's right. I'm opining on the subject based on a logical argument that you're squandering suffering in preposterous amounts. That's my accusation. Yes. And your counter-argument is, I can't find the moral dimension. Fail.
Is it morally disgusting? I don't see any objective basis for that. I don't disagree with you.
So if it was rape, it's okay too. I can't find the moral dimension. Oh, bullshit. You should sure as hell could find it if it was your ass on the line and if it were your kids on the chain gang. Fucker.
But I won't go as far as you. I just describe it as the way things are. Right?
Well, great. I mean, you would have been so useful back in the old suffrage days for women and back in the old, abolishment movement. That slogan would have gone so far. It's the way things are. Yeah, you would have been a real advocate, I'm sure. The old, it's the way things are argument. The argument from, it's the way things are.
You can be angry about it if you want to. You can be all sorts of emotions about it.
Oh, whatever. See, that's just the same old dodges with these people, right? When they care about something, it's okay for them to get all emotional. Thunderfoot is slaughtering, is spitting in the mouth because these Muhammad Islamis are not letting me draw cartoons. All hysterical and emotional because somebody flagged one of his fucking videos. All right, but no, nobody else can have an emotion about child enslavement. That's not a moral, emotional issue. Child enslavement to poverty or ignorance? No, nobody should get upset about that. That's silly, fluffy bullshit. Call bullshit on these people. Could you assholes be honest for once and call bullshit on these arguments?
When I see a violation, if you saw a rape, you would be angry and you'd be more motivated, okay? So you're not seeing the value that I'm seeing. Obviously, I see value in the mice that you're torturing every day, let's say at work. I see value in things you don't see value, and that's why I'm passionate about those things. So just ignore my passion and just deal with my argument. And my premise of my argument is that the real value, unlike saving a life, like this idea of saving a life, no, you prolong life. So right now we could save life in Africa, but what would be the consequences of saving that life? Oh, they'll have 5 kids that'll need UN food. They're never going to learn how to fish, right? They're always just going to be fish eaters, not fish catchers. And so all you create is more suffering. You create more kids to starve to death tomorrow. Like I said, we have 2 billion people living on this earth in squalor. 2 billion. And that's called success. I mean, people are walking around thinking it's good enough. It's not. It's obviously not there to do anything really about it.
Can I ask you, Gary, given the situation we're in now, how we've come by that, let's leave that aside for the moment, what policies or solutions would you advocate?
Well, I guess I'd argue that we got to do the kind of Einstein did a little bit of talking about social policy. I mean, he talked a little bit of Marxism, he talked a little bit of this, pragmatic values kind of stuff. And I'm just saying that scientists have become capitalists. They've become, whores for the system that exists. And I'm just saying, no, this system is a huge failure. We're not doing this efficiency thing. And even Thunderfoot talked about it.
Well, let's just take that point there. A failure compared to what?
I mean, even a scientist saying that. A failure compared to what? Right? Like somehow, if you're better than Mussolini, Stalin, and Hitler, you're okay. Why should I have to compare it to what? I'm saying there's a car. It consumes 500 gallons of gasoline and rolls 1 foot. I don't need to compare it to anything else in the universe to say, holy shit, that's not good enough. All right, but let's say you did need comparison. Let's say you don't get that 2 billion people living in squalor is an obscene inefficiency. Okay, let's just say you don't get that. Then let's say, well, I'm just saying, compared to what? Well, obviously compared to the millions of neurons we have that can imagine doing it much better, compared to all the things that could be. Yeah, that we can understand could be by doing simple little changes in behavior, and all of a sudden that's the world. That's right. Yeah, there's a whole big giant universe that could be. And scientists sort of should be aware that we have all these choices that we have in front of us, and that maybe we're making the wrong choices. Well, making the wrong decisions. The choices exist. We make decisions. Brain makes decisions. Doesn't choose.
A failure compared to what our brains can imagine, right? So I'm saying that we can imagine an efficiency like a Walt Disney.
Well, you can always imagine a better way of doing things, but you actually need to be able to practically implement something that's better. So I mean, where are you going to change things to actually make things better? Are you going to stop these scientists from actually trying to discover how the world functions such that they can actually make the world a better place? I mean, what are you going to...
So now, where did that come from, right? So wait, well, you didn't see the whole thing, but yeah, there's nothing in my commentary that was saying scientists aren't doing science, and I don't like, and somehow science is evil, or there was nothing in there. All I was saying is that scientists seem to be completely ethically run by DNA theism, where they've just replaced a god with a fucking insane molecule, and that's not a good exchange. Their ethics are depraved, is the only word for them. They're depraved. They're mimicking a DNA molecule's design. They're mimicking its statement about the world. Their God is insane. It's a molecule. Yeah, I think that's a problem.
Do that.
Straw man all over the place. Where have I advocated that? I'm very pro-science. What I'm against is the religion behind it.
You just spent the last 5 minutes bad-mouthing science and scientists.
Bad-mouthing science. So he just said I bad-mouthed science, which didn't happen, so that's just a lie. And yeah, I bad-mouthed scientists. I bad-mouthed their ethics and their lack of having anything relevant to say whatsoever on the colossal failure that is our civilization. Instead, they make, look at our beautiful home videos.
I'm bad-mouthing their motivations. I mean, you can't understand that I love science. I hate science for projected value reasons, okay? So what I'm saying is that they're valuing the wrong thing. They're valuing quantity over quality.
What are you talking about? We value trying to understand the universe. That's the goal of science. It's to actually understand the way the universe functions.
Yeah, well, even that argument can be argumented with, right? I mean, there's so much propaganda laid in most of that kind of science, truth discovery. So, I mean, theoretical physics is just full of phantasmagorical whacking off. And the hard science that most scientists are doing is so capitalistic. I mean, most of the real science that we're getting is being driven by some capitalistic desire to control human beings and control what they buy and, satisfy their consumerism. And the science of manipulating human psychology, the Google syndrome, is all that is the science that's thriving.
Already do. The vast majority of the big questions have been answered. I mean, it hasn't been a big answer since Charles Darwin.
That is just an incredibly mistake.
Okay, so this part I love. So they both are laughing and mocking the idea that the fundamental questions about the mechanism that is human were basically, if you could take 4 people in history, I would argue, Freud, Darwin, add a couple more, and you've got the game. You've got basically the diagram of what the human being is. You've got abiogenesis for 4 billion years of evolution, 500 million years of sentient development into a psychology, and now you can just play this out and say this is what we basically are. This is how we basically function. And so those truths are the ones I was pointing out are the ones that we've nailed down. We know it's not unicorn this, and we know it's not spiral that, and spectral this, and some other whammy-bammy bullshit that's running us. We know that it's evolution, natural selection, and that natural selection under our circumstance conformed us to gang warfare. And that's basically the model human. The model human isn't an individual bot in the world. It's part of a collective bot. It's a family bot, an epitistic bot, a nationalistic bot. And we can understand that, and those truths aren't going to be challenged by anything, and there's not much you can augment them with. We're not going to find out some new thing in the universe that's going to be relevant to that origin question, construction question, or purpose question. Those questions have all been answered completely.
You can make everybody a list, and I'll point out on your list how there's absolutely no real significance. The big story was, what are we? We found out we're a biological organism that was designed by natural selection, okay, to be basically gladiators.
And you think that's the end of the story?
And I think that's it. So this has come from Thunderfoot, a biologist guy, a guy who's supposed to understand something about evolution, and he thinks there's more to the evolutionary story than abiogenesis, replication is the primary mechanism, selfish gene mechanics over 4 billion years. He thinks there's something else going to fly out of the ether that we're going to discover that's somehow going to be relevant to that question of origin. He thinks there's more to the origin question than the basic functions of these forces that we do understand quite completely. Quite adequately, I won't say completely, adequately, sufficiently, to draw hard conclusions about function. A turtle's a turtle, a spider's a spider. Spiders aren't secretly CIA agents from some other planet. We know what spiders do. They spin webs to catch insects.
You think that's the big story? Right, this is the thing, Gary. Let me tell you something about being.
Okay, so he doesn't think that's the big story. Thunderfoot is saying you, in a mocking way again, you think that's the big story. That our origins is this bastard start in the swamp where we were built and designed by a stupid mechanism that had no ethics and was designing warrior machines in a gladiator bloodbath. You think that's the big story, when I'm going to tell you, know what the really big story is? Dark matter is sparkly when you shine a flashlight on it. No, I don't think that's a bigger story. Does anybody think that's a bigger story? No, I don't think the sparkly is a bigger story.
Scientists, right? The one thing that you learn very quickly is this element of humility that...
Can you imagine this element of humility, that sentence coming out of Thunderfoot's mouth? I mean, does everybody get a little bit of a, well, I can't help chortling at that one. That was a little bit chortable, you know? Oh, fuck.
When you're discovering the unknown, the universe is usually not only weirder than it looks, but it's also weirder than you can probably imagine it.
So here, where's the proof for that? Where is this weirder than I can imagine? And where was this where I was fooled somewhere? Because to tell you the truth, in the 50 years I've been here, I haven't seen any, holy shit, that's so much stranger than I ever imagined. I mean, there are some bizarre shit you find out. I mean, platypus, and you say, holy shit, that's pretty weird. But I don't really think that's supposed to sit there and overwhelm me so much that I can't recognize that evolution is the big story and that evolution made fucking platypuses. Yeah, I don't think so.
To be, if you think that all of the big things have been, if you think that science is essentially a done deal,
done deal in answering the questions of origins and purpose. The big questions, origins and function. Yeah, those two questions have been answered. The only function our intelligence has is pretty much being a slave to our desire. We've sort of figured that out. There's nothing to fix in the universe. We break all the stuff that needs fixing. I'm just saying, yeah, you're not going to find a truth out there in space that's going to explain in any way give any more meaning or substance or any facts that you could use in any meaningful way to make our existence any glorify it in any sense, or even enhance the way we have to look at it in any sense. We've been built by a very, very, very ignorant goddamn process. We are essentially the lean-to of function. I mean, we're barely functional. Barely. In the sense that it is so preposterously inefficient. We waste so much suffering.
You only have to take a look at the history of scientific discovery to realize that this is a very naive position. There is always, every time that someone has said, you know, everything that's important we need to know, there has been a new horizon.
Define it. No. For thousands of years we were held captive to ignorant, stupid religion. And all we did was break free enough to say, well, I have proof that God's dead this time. Darwin shows up and says, I kind of have proof. And so he made his proof, and it's a pretty persuasive proof, and so now we're finally getting liberated from being morons. But that's all. It took us thousands of years to figure out the simplest and the most pertinent information. The most obvious, glaring, simplest, but the most important facts. And it took us thousands of years to do that because of the obsessive corruption of our psychology compromising our intelligence, constantly compromising our intelligence with our psychological nonsense. Humans need to exist in the universe because they're so much better than the non-existent Martians. You know they're not.
And our understanding of the universe has been shown to be simplistic.
Oh, well, I'm not talking about the details, right? We don't have the whole...
Yeah, well, even that's a silly thing. I mean, Einstein's 100 years ago. They're really, come on, E equals MC squared, the big one. But really not terribly relevant to a hell of a lot, and not relevant at all, really, to the facts of what we're doing on planet Earth. Our function, it's all Dawkins kind of stuff. It's all gene evolution. The evolution of a molecule.
Quantum thing figured out and all the details figured out. I'm talking about the big truths of what we are made out of, what created us. We know what created us. We know what abiogenesis is in concept. We know how we were structured and how we were designed to be consuming, reproducing, getting addicted, and basically, because we're living on an island planet, cannibalizing. And that's the mechanism that drives all living organisms. The highest form of life in the ocean, after 4 billion years of evolution, is what? An octopus. Okay, that's what nature naturally created in all the evolution.
But Gary, the whole thing that you've stated there is essentially a consequence of the thermodynamics of our universe. Now, if you wanted to...
Now, isn't that amazing? He says it's a consequence of the thermodynamics of our universe. And basically, no, it's basically the exception to thermodynamics. Most of the universe is doing that never get too complicated thing because it's always going to blow up and burn out. And because we're in a closed system, we're able to do this more complex chemistry. So we're basically doing what the universe isn't doing. You know, I mean, I did point that out, but he doesn't.
Well, ask the big question. Why is the universe like that?
And he thinks that's the big question. Again, how is that answer going to mean anything? Does anybody think that answer has a meaningful answer besides because cause and effect and it's just a bunch of stuff bouncing off of each other and that's just the way it turned out? I mean, the irrelevant important fact is we were designed by a process called natural selection that basically set up an intensely disgusting gladiator war that none of us would ever do. We couldn't ethically get a permit to run a game. A dog fight as disgusting as natural selection. No one would give us a permit to run a dog fight as ugly as natural selection. That's the process that built us. And that's a significant fact, and that's the fact, again, this scientist is demonstrating he's running like hell from it.
Why would I care why it's like that? I don't need that. I understand what replication.
You say all the big questions.
Why are you yelling, getting all emotional? He's just voicing an opinion. See the hypocrisy?
Been answered. You don't even understand why the properties of the universe are the way they are.
So now he has accused me of not understanding the properties of the universe are the way they are. I think they're the way they are because of cause and effect. I don't think I need any more complex explanation. And I don't think the physics gets more complicated when you get smaller. I think it's going to get simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler. And I think that's the way it works. Yeah. Complexity is a consequence of having gazillions of photons banging and arranged into each other. You can't have complexity unless you have a whole big pile of stuff. And when you get smaller, you have less stuff. So you have less complexity. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I do know what natural selection is, and I know that it's a conceptual word. It's a phenomenon. It's a property of matter replicating. Okay, and that's the most significant feature of our development. We are a product of a DNA molecule replicating. That's what created us in substance. The rest of the thermodynamics of the universe is basically a more crude chemistry. Most of the complex compounds in the universe exist right here on Earth, being created by living organisms, created by the replication of a DNA molecule. That's
what I don't understand, Gary, is this.
Thermodynamics.
What I don't understand, Gary, is this, if I may, just to see if this will help clarify the issue. You seem to be angry about the way the universe is and the nature itself. And this is why I go back to the question, well, you know...
Well, you see, so again, I just, just to point out, you seem to be angry about. You see how you manipulate, your language, because if somebody's an advocate for something, now you want to call them angry about? I'm arguing that it's a crude system. Does that sound angry when I say it's a crude system? Because I said it with a little bit of emphasis, that means it's angry? No, I'm pointing out it's a crude system, and we have to account for that. We have to compensate for that. And there doesn't appear to be any intellectuals who seem to be able to find the moral dimension. They can't find it. And that seems like it's a little bit fucking problematic. So that little part was angry, but the end part was... Well, that was psychotic. This part was angry, and then that part was psychotic, because it got really calm, and, calm is usually evidence of psychotic.
It's happened. We're here, and obviously as a consequence of those processes that you've talked about. But now we are here. Where do we go from this point onwards?
See, I know. Look, D.P.R. Jones is a nice enough guy, so I'm not going to get... It's okay to do this where do we go thing. But the argument I would make to you is somebody has to recognize a problem before they can fix a problem, right? So, I've done, as people listening to this video probably know, I've done literally thousands of videos about solutions to the problems we're in. At least hundreds on detailing solutions to problems. So, that's not what I came on the show to talk about was my solutions, because people won't even hear about the solutions until they identify the problem. There's no point in telling somebody how to cook a good vegetarian meal until they've decided that they need to become a vegetarian. Do you get it? If they're not motivated to fix a problem, there's no point in trying to sell solutions.
Again, it's achieving that efficiency thing. So that's what I'm trying to argue. I'm saying that the value, we're caught up in a negative value game. That this game is really hard to play to win. Okay? It's a game that you can lose a lot playing because you're playing with a very precious commodity called sentience. So it costs a lot to get one thing comfortable. It costs something else's discomfort. For us to have our high lifestyle here, we have to exploit people somewhere else. There's always this part of this game that's being played that is very expensive in terms of the sentience being consumed to produce our comfort. Right now, in, like I said, medical laboratories, we're literally torturing sentient mice because they can't pass an IQ test. Okay, no other good reason, because they're not our species. They don't have exactly our DNA code, but they're having intense feeling experiences, and we're negating the value of that. And that's what I'm saying, where we have our values misplaced. We are valuing human life, okay? We don't care that, well, you know, Martians never existed. Venetians never existed. Jabba the Hutt never existed. We don't miss any of those species. Why are we so obsessed with this species? And what I'm saying is we're obsessed with this species purely because of psychological projection. There is no real value. It's a Cheeto that we are creating value in. And so most of the things we are valuing are projections of value, and that the only real value is created in the sentient experience. Anytime there is an...
Wow, this guy's good. Sorry, I didn't really know. But yeah, so they let me speak there, which was good. So, I mean, that... But probably no one even paid any attention to that part. But, I mean, yeah, that was pretty good. So I'm probably going to run out of time any time now. So I don't know if I'll do a part 2. I don't know if it's necessary. See how my day goes, blah, 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 blah. But we'll just play this out and see where it goes.
A suffering human or a suffering sentient animal, there is negative value being created, and it must be compensated for, it must be prevented, it must be eliminated, or you can't justify this.
Gary, you're putting forward two mutually incompatible concepts here. The first one is you say that all sentience should be preserved.
Yeah. Now, what did I say? All sentience should be preserved, right? So now he took an argument and changed the word again. So, and the word meanings here are colossally important. Okay? Protecting and preserving are not the same word, right? Stopping slavery and making more humans is not the same thing, or so there's no contradiction, because he doesn't get that I'm not advocating that, I'm advocating that you stop paying so high a price. That's right, so you have to come up with a better game strategy, because this game strategy isn't efficient enough. It isn't sufficiently efficient.
And at the same time, the very DNA code to actually produce that sentience was produced by this bloodbath of evolution.
So now he's saying somehow that I'm glorifying our creation, and I haven't done anything close to glorifying our creation anywhere in here. I haven't said that it was worth it, or that it's good enough, that we have to have it, that it's necessary. I haven't made any of those arguments whatsoever, and so now he's creating a false contradiction. I didn't make any. There's no contradiction in what I said. I'm saying it's horrifically expensive, and if we don't even recognize it's horrifically expensive, then certainly we're never going to fix it. That's for damn sure, because scientists are all talking about circles of life and sparkly.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't press the button.
You can't have both sides of the coin.
I can't undo the system. There's no undo button. I would press it if there was one. I would press it, but that's irrelevant to the conversation. I can still criticize the machine as inefficient. Okay, the fact that I didn't make the car doesn't mean that I can't say it doesn't get good enough gas mileage. I can still...
Well, in which case, why do you limit